We need to talk about this last episode of Love After Lockup, but before we get to that, we do need to talk about some breaking news. So Michael and Kayleigh are officially divorced. So Michael got out of prison in July of 2025, and not even 5 months later in November, he was filing for divorce from Kayleigh. And as soon as he filed for divorce, he went to all his creditors to make sure Kayleigh was removed off his account so she couldn't potentially run his credit up anymore. It sounds like things were split up pretty fairly. Michael got to keep his Jeep, Kayleigh got to keep her Jeep, and Kayleigh has this house, and it sounds like Kayleigh got her house, and whatever they had that they brought into the marriage, they got to keep. What I find interesting is Kiki and Kibitz, they were the one that broke this news, and I guess they got a hold of the court documents, and there was a special clause in the court documents that say that Michael is not entitled to any of the money that Kayleigh made from Love during lockup, because as I've said before, the inmates don't get paid from their first season because they have this Son of Sam law where they can't make money off their crimes, but they come back for another season, then they can start making money from the show. But a lot of times, like, the non-inmate will be like, okay, I'll give you a little bit of what I make. And Michael was trying to claim that Kayleigh made $10,000 from Love during lockup, and she was promising him half of it, but she only gave him $1,000, and we covered that in my last video. But in their divorce contract, there was a special clause that said he's not entitled to a single dime. Then Michael made a video the other day on Facebook, and he decided to respond to some of Kayleigh's recent claims that she only had his credit cards open for a few months and she only maxed his credit cards out to $200. So Michael said, this is the card from the day he got out, where she made a $199 payment to put it at a zero balance. So she was trying to hurry up and make sure that it balanced out. But you know, when you make a payment, it can sometimes take a few days to catch up. So that's probably why when they're at the meat shop, it still got declined. And this is 2 months before he got out of prison, where she owed $200. And then he said this is 1 month before he got out, where she owed $234. And he's like, look, I only had a $200 credit limit, so I don't even know how it got to $234, which I'm assuming that was from credit card interest. And then here he is showing that she claimed that she only had the credit card open for a few months, but he got out in July of 2025, and this credit card was opened in November of 2024. So this credit card was open for, what, damn near 9 months before he got out. Now let's talk about this last episode. So we see Kayleigh, and she's in her car, and she's driving to Michael, and apparently in the last episode, when we saw Michael and he left and went back to the halfway house when Kayleigh dropped him off, he got out of the Jeep so fast he jumped out because he was pissed off. And I guess he didn't realize that the Jeep was lifted because he's been in prison so long, and it sounds like he's not used to being in lifted vehicles. So when he jumped out, he ended up hurting his leg. And I was wondering what was going on, because when they showed him walking in the last episode, like into the gates of the halfway house, to me it looked like he tripped. You know, like one of those maneuvers when you trip and then you gotta like hurry up and walk real fast to try to kind of like walk it off and make it look like you didn't trip. That's what I thought that Michael was doing, but no, apparently he was like limping and struggling to walk because he really hurt his knee, and he said it's to the point like it's popping every time that he walks. So Kayleigh was like, man, I gotta go look out for my man, and she decided to go get him a knee brace, and she decided to drive. I can't remember how far she lives from the halfway house. I think it's like a 30-40 minute drive there and then 30-40 minutes back. So she drove up to the halfway house just to bring him a knee brace, and she said that they're supposed to have their first date, but she doesn't even really know if they're going to have their first date because Michael isn't too happy with her because he printed off the credit card statements, and now Kayleigh's all stressed out about what he's going to find. But she's like, look, I mean, a lot of that money went towards Michael, and she said, but there was money that I was blowing, and she tries to blame that on her mom and what her mom taught her. I think that's a big reason why Kayleigh downplays like the money that she has spent on Michael's and ruining his credit in her head like she does, because that's what her mom did to her. I mean, we saw how much her mom downplayed it to her when they had that conversation when they got together, and her mom was like, well, I've been doing good for so many years now. But that doesn't take away the fact that the mother straight up destroyed Kayleigh's credit, something that she's going to have to deal with for the rest of her life. And then Kayleigh went and took this knee brace to Michael, and Michael kind kind of had an attitude with her, and he took it, and she's like, okay, so you're not going to really show your appreciative? Like, I drove 30-40 minutes here, and now I got to drive that much back. And Michael, I'm not going to lie, I died when he's like, what do you want me to do? Get on my good knee? And she sat there and was like, no, I just want you to show that you're thankful. And Michael was like, look, I appreciate it, but I'm not too happy with you. And he said, it's the least you could do as my wife after you've done so many things for yourself. And he ended up revealing, when he looked at the bank statement, she was spending so much money on stupid things that she can't budget. He said some months she was spending $1,200 on coffee, and we did the math in my last video. That is 5.79 coffees a day. That is damn near 6 coffees a day at $7 a coffee for like a standard latte or iced fancy coffee from Starbucks or Dunkin'. So she was going crazy, and that's just on coffee alone. And when she said, I want to treat myself to coffee every morning, I thought she just meant 1 coffee. I didn't know she meant 5, 6. That's why the whole let me treat myself mindset can be so damaging, because I'm a coffee addict myself, and I used to spend a lot of money on coffee. Never $1,200 a month, but it can be damaging because you go from being like, oh, okay, you know, I worked hard last night, let me treat myself today, and then you get that coffee, but then you see it like, okay, this is like my reward or my special treat, but then you start telling yourself, I need to treat myself every single day, so you start getting that coffee every single day, and now it's like part of your routine, so now it's an expectation, so now you feel like you gotta wake up and you have to have that coffee, and then you go from spending $7 a week to freaking $1,200 a month like Kayleigh's doing. True self-care is about doing what's best for your future self, doing something now that your future self will thank you for. And Kayleigh spending all this money on coffee isn't going to do anything but just put her in a stressful situation later on, especially right now that Michael's going over all her finances and holding her accountable. I do want to give a quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Pieter Post. So if you have a friend or a loved one that's in federal prison and you've been wanting to reach out to them but you don't know where to start, all you gotta do is go to this website. You can search their name and you can send them a letter, you can send them postcards, you can send them pictures. They print it off and send it to the inmate for you, and you don't have to make an account, you don't have to download an app. It's simple and quick, so definitely check them out. I will leave it linked in the description. Now back to the video. If Kayleigh doesn't do anything with this money from the show, like if she goes and blows all this money on coffee and stupid things and has nothing to show with this money, I hope the one thing that she makes sure that she invested is a good accountant. And I'm not talking about no like street accountant like Letitia. I'm talking about like a real deal accountant from like a business that you can go see that's been in the business for years and that's credible, that can really put her in a better place with her finances. And then we see Michael in a confessional, and I'm so glad he opened up about this because I had questions. He said, look, all these things that Kayleigh has been doing, like paying for the stuff for my license and all this other things, I thought these were things that Michael was just expecting from Kayleigh because Kayleigh was his wife. Like, hey, if you're gonna date me and I'm an inmate and you're the one on the outside making money, then you need to take care of me. Because it kind of made me feel a way like when he got out and he wanted to buy all this expensive meat and then he wanted Kayleigh to buy all that stuff. Like, if you got that much money in your pocket, $14K, the least you can do is buy the meat instead of like looking at Kayleigh expecting you to buy it, especially with at that point when he thought that all this money that Kayleigh had been spending was her own money, not his. But anyways, he's like, look, I wasn't asking for these things. I wasn't expecting these things. He said Kayleigh is the one who offered these things, and then they went back and showed old clips where Kayleigh agreed, yes, I took care of all these things, and I'm glad that they got that on camera. But yeah, I think Kayleigh thought, you know, like she needed to keep Michael, so she needed to go above and beyond paying all these things, even though she knew she really couldn't afford it. And she said these things and to hold on to Michael, and now it's all catching up with her. And I mean, did you really think that the jig was going to be up for long once he got out? Kayleigh's got to learn, you got to stop over promising and under delivering. It should be the exact opposite, where you under promise and over deliver, and then you exceed their expectations. And then we see Michael, and he gets picked up by his mom, and his mom's been dating this guy for a while that Michael hasn't met yet. But apparently he does construction or has a construction company, which is perfect for Michael because that's the type of work he's trying to get into. So his mom takes him to an interview with her boyfriend, and the guy was like, look, I'm not going to treat you any differently just because I'm dating your mom or anything, and you got to stay on the straight and narrow and prove yourself and work hard. But he offered him a job. He just told him that he needed to get a license so he can drive a company truck. So Michael gets out in the truck or his car with his mom, and he's like, hey, we got to go get my license. He pulls up to get his license, and he thinks it's only going to cost him like $500, maybe $1,000 tops. But he goes in and he learns that he had to pay $6,000 in his license fees to get his license back, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of dumb when it comes to all that, so I don't understand. Like, is it, I guess he had a vehicle all this time and he wasn't paying the taxes on the vehicle? Is that what he meant? Or were there like fees from like court fines? That's what I'm a little confused about. If you guys know, let me know. But anyways, he goes in and he thought that he was barely going to have to pay anything, but he ended up learning he had to pay 6 racks because Kayleigh promised him this whole time that she was taking care of all this stuff. Then he comes out to find out that nothing really has been taken care of. I mean, maybe she paid a little bit and it was higher than that, but from the looks of it, he's like, man, it looks like she hasn't done diddly squat that she promised me. So he's all pissed off because he had $14K getting out, and now damn near half of that is gone. And thank God he had that money saved up because he would be all types of screwed. It almost makes me wonder, did Kayleigh screw up his credit to make him dependent on her, you know? Because if she was to ruin his credit, then it'd make it harder for him to get away and like get his own place and stuff like that. Is that why she put him in the hole? Like, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with the fact she has zero self-control, but it really makes you think about stuff like that. Because, like, I mean, he would have had to be completely dependent on her to get his license if he didn't have that money in his pocket. That's it for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and thank you guys so much for watching.